It was a moment that shook not just Venezuela, but the entire world. Nicolás Maduro, the man who had clung to power for years amidst deepening crisis and international isolation, was taken not by his enemies, but by the very forces he had long defied, the United States, in a bold, almost cinematic operation. U.S. forces raided Caracas. They seized Maduro from under the protection of his most trusted guards. They transported him to New York, facing charges that would define his legacy, narco-terrorism. But this wasn't just a takedown of a dictator. This was a strategic move, a clear message to the world about the power dynamics shifting in Latin America. And in the wake of Maduro's downfall, the interim president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodríguez, is left to pick up the pieces. Starting with a decision that many saw as necessary but explosive, the sacking of General Javier Marcano Tábata, the man who had once protected Maduro's life with unwavering loyalty. What does this moment mean for the future of Venezuela? What is the cost of this seismic shift, and who stands to gain from it? Stay with me as we unpack this dramatic turning point in Venezuela's struggle for survival. To understand the magnitude of what just unfolded, we have to ask, how did we get here? Venezuela, a country once rich in oil, now finds itself on the brink of collapse. Decades of mismanagement, corruption, and authoritarian rule have pushed the nation to the edge. Maduro's grip on power had been fragile, but the storm brewing in Venezuela has now reached a breaking point. The United States, which has long been at odds with the Venezuelan regime, made its move. With a raid that was swift and decisive, the U.S. took Maduro, the symbol of resistance to American influence, and shattered the veneer of his power. But it wasn't just a political move. It was a statement, a declaration of the new world order in Latin America. And in this chaos, Delcy Rodríguez, Maduro's former vice president, stepped in. Sworn in as interim president by a National Assembly loyal to the government, Rodríguez now faces the monumental task of rebuilding a nation fractured by years of turmoil. Yet, as we look closer, we begin to see the cracks in her government. The first signs of tension appear as Rodríguez's decision to remove General Marcano Tábata raises eyebrows. Why now? Why this particular moment? To truly grasp the significance of this moment, we must step back. Look at the history of Venezuela. A country once lauded as the wealthiest in Latin America. With the world's largest oil reserves, Venezuela seemed poised for greatness. But instead, it spiraled into economic ruin. The roots of Venezuela's current crisis lie in a long history of mismanagement. Over decades, oil wealth was squandered. Economic policies became more focused on holding on to power than building a sustainable future for the people. And when Hugo Chavez came to power, he promised revolution, a bold new direction that would uplift the poor. But his vision also brought deep divides. And when Maduro succeeded him, those divides only grew wider. Venezuela became a place of extreme polarization. The economy crashed. Inflation reached catastrophic levels, and the people, once the beneficiaries of oil riches, now face daily struggles to survive. This is the context that Delcy Rodríguez inherits, the remnants of a system that was once built on oil, but is now crumbling. The question is, can she restore it, or will Venezuela sink deeper into chaos? Then came the shock that no one expected. The U.S. forces seized Maduro in a bold military operation. The world watched as the leader of Venezuela was carted away, not by his allies, but by the very powers that had long been plotting his downfall. The implications were massive, and the effects were felt immediately. Maduro's personal guard, the Presidential Honor Guard, the elite force tasked with protecting him, had failed in their most critical moment. How could a country's most trusted military unit allow its leader to be taken so easily? The blow to Venezuela's pride was devastating. This failure led to immediate changes. Delcy Rodríguez, the new interim president, acted swiftly. She sacked General Javier Marcano Tábata, the man in charge of the honor guard, His failure to protect Maduro had left the country vulnerable. Rodríguez couldn't afford to let this lapse in security slide. It was a sign to both the country and the world. Things were changing. But was this a simple tactical shift, or was there something deeper at play? As we dig deeper into the situation, something becomes clear. The crisis isn't just about Maduro being taken. It's about the system that allowed his regime to thrive for so long despite its many flaws. The inner workings of Venezuela's military, intelligence, and security apparatus have been key to Maduro's grip on power. And now, these very structures are crumbling. The DGCIM, Venezuela's military counterintelligence unit, led by Marcano Tábata, had played a critical role in suppressing dissent. They were the ones who tortured, imprisoned, and silenced those who dared challenge the regime. Their role in repressing the opposition became notorious. Under Tábata's leadership, they had become a symbol of the government's iron fist. But here's the twist. Rodríguez's new pick to replace Tábata, Gustavo González López, has a history with a similar unit. SEBIN, Venezuela's National Intelligence Service. SEBIN controlled notorious prisons where opposition figures were subjected to brutal abuse. López, like Tábata, had a hand in the system of control and oppression that defined Maduro's rule. So, while Rodríguez might be reshuffling the pieces, it raises an important question. Can the system that oppressed so many really change? Just when it seemed like the dust had settled, another wave of tension hit. The US made it clear this wasn't over. President Trump, after the successful operation to capture Maduro, warned that further action might be coming. The message was unmistakable. The US was not finished with Venezuela. Trump spoke openly about a second wave of strikes should Venezuela's interim government fail to comply with US demands. These demands were harsh. Venezuela's vast oil reserves were the focal point. Oil, the lifeblood of the country's economy, was now being eyed by the US with increasing urgency. Trump's words sent shockwaves through the international community. Up to 50 million barrels of oil might be taken from Venezuela. The message was clear: cooperate or suffer the consequences. For Delcy Rodríguez, this was an unprecedented challenge. Her leadership was now under the microscope, and the weight of US threats loomed large. But more than that, her response would define her political future. Would she stand firm against US pressure? Or would she give in, like many believe Maduro had done before her? For the people of Venezuela, the crisis goes far beyond political maneuvering. It's a matter of survival. Millions of Venezuelans have already fled the country, escaping the economic collapse, the violence, and the constant fear that has gripped their daily lives. The weight of Maduro's government and now the uncertainty under Rodríguez is unbearable. Delcy Rodríguez's government, like its predecessor, must answer to the people. And that is where the true test lies. The sacking of General Marcano Tábata might have been a political move, but it also highlights the failure of the system to protect the people. The president's guards didn't just fail to protect Maduro, they failed to protect a country in crisis. With food shortages, hyperinflation, and a health crisis that has seen countless lives lost, the Venezuelan people are bearing the brunt of decisions made in boardrooms and presidential palaces. Rodríguez can send messages to the world, but her message to her people must be clear. Will she bring hope to the suffering masses, or will the Venezuelan people remain the silent victims of a broken system? The drama unfolding in Venezuela isn't just a local affair. It's a geopolitical chess game with global stakes. The world is watching, and the consequences are rippling far beyond the borders of Venezuela. In this high-stakes game, Venezuela's allies are key. Cuba, a longtime supporter, has already suffered losses. 32 Cuban nationals were killed in the US. Raid, many of whom were embedded in Maduro's personal guard. This attack not only weakened Venezuela's defenses, but also sent a message to Cuba and other allies. No one is safe from the reach of US power. But the US isn't the only global player in this conflict. Russia and China have both been involved in Venezuela, providing economic support and offering military aid. How will they react as the situation unfolds? Will they intervene more forcefully to protect their interests, or will they sit back as the U.S. tightens its grip? For the global community, this is a delicate balance. The U.S. has made its move, but what will the response from other powers be? Will this crisis escalate into a larger global conflict, or will diplomacy find a way to ease tensions? As we look to the future, we see three possible paths for Venezuela. Each one carries a distinct outcome, but each one is deeply uncertain. Scenario 1, the best case. Rodríguez manages to stabilize the situation. She garners the support of the people and the international community. Venezuela begins to rebuild. The country starts working with the U.S. on mutually beneficial terms. Oil exports, once a source of conflict, become a tool for economic recovery. With international assistance and internal reforms, Venezuela emerges from its darkest days. Scenario 2, the middle ground. Rodríguez faces continued resistance. The interim government struggles to maintain control as Maduro loyalists fight back. U.S. pressure grows, and Venezuela's economy continues to crumble under the weight of sanctions. But at the same time, international support remains steady. In this scenario, Venezuela limps along, neither fully collapsing nor fully recovering. The people continue to suffer, but the country survives just barely. Scenario 3, the worst case. Venezuela descends further into chaos. The interim government collapses, and a power vacuum opens up. Civil unrest escalates. External intervention becomes inevitable. The country's oil wealth becomes a battleground for global powers. Venezuela becomes a failed state with no clear path to recovery. The suffering of the Venezuelan people reaches new depths. The future of Venezuela hangs in the balance. As we've seen, the country is at a critical crossroads. The actions taken in the coming days and months will determine whether Venezuela can rebuild or whether it will continue its painful slide into deeper turmoil. Delcy Rodríguez's leadership will be tested in ways no one can predict. Will she rise to the challenge, or will she be swept away by the same forces that toppled Maduro? The world is watching, and the people of Venezuela are waiting for change, any change that might offer hope. But beyond politics and geopolitics, the question remains, what can we learn from Venezuela's story? A nation that once had everything now finds itself on the edge of collapse. The lesson is clear. Power, wealth, and resources mean little if they are not managed responsibly and equitably. The people always pay the price for mismanagement, and the ripple effects are felt worldwide. So, as this crisis unfolds, one thing is certain. Venezuela's future will shape the way we think about the power of nations, the role of international intervention, and the fragility of political systems.